much, and especially to General Bynum for being here with us today, and thank you for having me as well. I don't like to think of myself as very old, but after that introduction, I think with my reading glasses and so forth, I'm a little aged here, but it's very good to be here in The Hague, and I'm glad to be able to discuss Defender 20 with you today. So I do have some prepared remarks that I'm going to read, but they're not too long, and I look forward to getting into the discussion as I finish those. But let me start by saying that the United States takes great pride in our alliance with the Netherlands. The alliance between our two nations remains one of our oldest continuous bilateral relationships. The U.S. and the Netherlands have been partners in arms dating all the way back to the American Revolution. Our rich shared history includes serving side by side in the Korean War and in the Gulf War. We've worked together to promote peacekeeping efforts in areas such as the former Yugoslavia, Afghanistan, and Iraq, just to name a few. As one of NATO's charter members, we've counted on the Dutch, from utilizing your world-class ports to your expertise in logistics. And we know you've counted on us to support joint NATO missions from the organization's founding year in 1949 to today. And I'll also date myself. When I was a lieutenant in Germany 30 years ago, I was stationed in northern Germany, and my battalion had units we had 2 units that were here in the Netherlands. So I have literally worked with your Army since the beginning of my military service. I'd like to set the stage with some of the background that has informed the development of Defender Europe 20 exercise. Reflecting on the last 30 years, the end of the Cold War resulted in a significant reduction of permanent U.S. forces in Europe. In 2014, the last U.S. tank left Europe as part of our reduction in forces. In response to Russian aggression in Ukraine later that year, and previously in Georgia, the U.S. began rotating forces back to Europe on 9-month deployments that we call Atlantic Resolve. These rotations aim to simultaneously deter any further aggression and demonstrate our commitment to our European allies and partners. Over the last several years, the U.S. military has concentrated on and made great strides toward building the tactical readiness of service members and units. This is the ability of our brigade combat teams to execute their assigned combat missions. Strategic readiness includes the ability of the U.S. and our allies to organize and deploy troops, sustain them during times of conflict, and redeploy them when their mission is complete. Today, we believe it's time to focus on this strategic readiness in order to maintain peace and security in the region for future generations to come. I'd like to give an overview of how Defender Europe will contribute to that strategic readiness. Defender Europe 20 is a headquarters, Department of the Army directed, U.S. Army led exercise. It will be the largest deployment of U.S.-based forces in Europe for an exercise in over 25 years. The purpose of Defender is to exercise the U.S. military's ability to deploy a large force of personnel and equipment from the U.S. to Europe and, alongside our NATO allies and partners, quickly respond to any crisis. This is a part of a larger U.S. Army Readiness Initiative, which will see a similar exercise conducted in the Pacific later this year. But the first one will be here in Europe. And I think this clearly demonstrates the U.S. steadfast commitment to NATO, the defense of Europe, and deterrence of aggression. As its name suggests, Defender and its linked exercises are defensive in nature. They are not intended to deter any single potential security or humanitarian threat. Rather, these exercises will prepare us to react to a variety of scenarios that could jeopardize the U.S., its allies, or partners by integrating all domains of defense, including land, sea, air, space, and cyberspace. While we have rotated forces to Europe for the past 5 years, as I mentioned earlier, we have not executed these actions at the scale we will during Defender 20. This scale significantly increases the complexity of the exercise and drives the strategic readiness metrics we seek to improve. This is not just a U.S. exercise, though. Defender 20 is a whole of Europe event. There are 18 nations participating and many civilian agencies from numerous countries. As U.S. soldiers arrive to Europe, most of their equipment will come via multiple seaports in Belgium, Germany, and in the Netherlands port of Vlissingen. The first U.S. soldiers have already begun to arrive in Europe. In fact, earlier today, a media event highlighted U.S. Army soldiers collecting equipment and vehicles at the Army Preposition Stock, or APS site, in Zoetermeer, Belgium, about 230 kilometers from here. These ports and APS sites will serve as logistical hubs for Defender Europe 20. All of these personnel and their equipment will then need to move across multiple countries to arrive at training areas in Germany, Poland, and the Baltics. Once U.S. soldiers and equipment arrive at the various training areas, they will join other NATO ally and partner militaries to conduct various linked training exercises. One reason the Dutch are such an important partner in Defender is your consistent, strong leadership in promoting military mobility via PEPSCO and beyond. Why is military mobility so essential? Safeguarding the ease of movement of our military alliance into and across Europe and not only ensures our troops can meet critical timelines to reach their destinations, but it also builds trust and collaboration throughout the region. Furthermore, this mobility acts as a deterrent to potential adversaries who understand our ability to organize and react quickly, whether from within the European theater or from an ocean away. Facilitating military movement across borders is complicated. We respect the borders of sovereign nations. We also recognize that enhancing military mobility allows NATO allies and partners to cooperatively prevent conflict, preserve peace, and keep our nations safe. Time is of the essence, whether for exercises in peacetime or supplying reinforcements in an emerging crisis. The collective investments in infrastructure, the streamlining of custom formalities, and the access and enhanced cross-border movement permissions between the U.S. and allies are necessary for success. In addition to improving our mobility, Defender will highlight another crucial element of our success during joint operations and exercises: interoperability. Interoperability forces us to think through each stage of an operation and ask the question when we bring together all of our NATO allies and partner troops with all of our equipment. Can they work together? Not just that, but how will they function properly together? In reality, interoperability is the very foundation of our ability to train together, work together, and learn together. A simplified example of how important interoperability is to our joint missions is imagine a U.S. tank whose equipment and crew travels on a naval ship over here to a European port. And as the operators take that tank off the ship and start to refuel it, realize that the nozzle for the gas from the host nation doesn't fit in the tank. That's very simplified, but those are some of the examples of things that we have to think through. Sometimes interoperability is really as simple as asking, does our equipment function together? Do our vehicles meet the emission standards of our partners? Do we understand acronyms or terms to mean the same thing? Are we able to accomplish our joint missions on a basic logistical level? We also know that engaging with the militaries of other nations gives all of our service members the opportunity to learn new skills and gain new perspectives, and allows them to understand the cultures of our allies and partners. For all of these reasons, exercises like this provide crucial opportunities to navigate unexpected challenges during drills rather than in the midst of an actual crisis. To accomplish Defender Europe 20 in these linked exercises decisively, the U.S. and all partnering nations will rely on our host nations. Host nations will secure ports as equipment is offloaded, escort convoys, support the high volume of rail movements, coordinate cross-border movement, and expedite the contracting of buses and line haul assets. We greatly appreciate the contributions from the Dutch, as well as the 17 other contributing NATO allies and partners. The mission and task associated with this exercise could not be completed without this truly being a joint effort. Not only does Defender rely on procedural coordination, but personal relationships and other support requirements necessary to enable the military to respond to a security crisis. These are the same procedures necessary for a response to any humanitarian crisis NATO may be called on to support. The integration of multiple allies and partners in the European theater provides an opportunity to communicate alliance-wide military readiness and strength, in addition to increased regional security and stability. Now, we at U.S. Army Europe understand the importance of sharing information and transparency in all of our operations. As we embark on this large-scale multinational joint exercise, a top priority is continuing to be a good partner. We are doing everything we can to reduce the exercise effects on the Dutch and other host nation citizens. Going back to the traffic problem. For this reason, the convoys will take place primarily at night between 2200 and 0600 in small groups of 10 to 20 wheeled vehicles to minimize impact. In addition, our drivers are trained to allow room between each of their vehicles and to drive at slower speeds to allow civilian vehicles to pass the convoys. In addition, we are actively working to mitigate any environmental impacts from our training. For instance, a mandatory maintenance program ensures all vehicles are held to the highest standard. Using high-quality fuel and instructions to limit vehicle idling times are another part of our implementation plan. Likewise, whenever possible, we will transport vehicles by sea and rail instead of long-haul vehicles and aircraft. These practices, among others, help keep fuel efficiency high and carbon emissions as low as possible. We are sensitive to holidays and weekends. We will have a no movement period on local roads for the Easter holiday. We will abide by all flight and training agreements as we normally do to minimize the impact of operations on our Dutch friends, as well as across all allied and partner nations where the exercise will take place. Defender 20 is expected to wrap up by June. Once all the training is complete, U.S. soldiers and their equipment will redeploy back to the U.S. Most of our forces will depart from the closest ports to the training locations, so movement back through the Netherlands will be minimized at the conclusion of the exercise. This allows us to determine our ability to utilize additional ports. We remain grateful for the commitment of the Dutch to strengthening the ability of our alliance to move critical military assets across the region. The Netherlands continues to demonstrate partnership to the U.S. in NATO-led operations with highly trained, interoperable forces and contributions to international operations, including and beyond Defender. When we accomplish our mission, this exercise will underscore the fact that NATO allies and partners stand strongest when we stand together. This exercise will enhance the strategic readiness of the U.S. military while undoubtedly enhancing the military mobility and interoperability of all participating nations, including the Netherlands. And lastly, this exercise reinforces the U.S. commitment to NATO, which is ironclad. In conclusion, I wish to say thanks to the Atlantic Forum, which is committed to bringing young leaders to strengthen transatlantic cooperation in areas of international security and defense. Also, Defender 20 would not be possible without the support of our U.S. Embassy, The Hague, and our counterparts at the Dutch Ministry of Defense, the Royal Netherlands Armed Forces, and the Dutch people. Thank you for your support of our soldiers when they are here in the Netherlands, and for everything you are doing to support Defender 20, and for all you do to support the NATO alliance. And I look forward to your questions. Thank you.